So good evening to those who are here. We don't have a term. We had this set up as a webinar, and if you're interested in joining us as a panelist or a meeting participant, you're welcome to raise your hand, and I'll be happy to move you over. As the webinar set up, I mean, you can't see other participants, so it's helpful if we have a lot of people in the meeting, but if there's, I mean, right now I think there's about 10 participants here, so we're happy to host this as a regular meeting. What it would mean is just raise your hand if you'd like to be moved over. You're welcome to share your camera or not. And you would get a message saying promote to panelists. So if you would like to be there, just raise your hand and we'll slide you over.
Hey, I don't plan on speaking or anything, but I wanted to be here if someone had a particular question for me or y'all wanted some. I want to listen because I can't come Thursday night. I have a conflict, but I wanted to hear what's going on. So.
Well, you're more than welcome to, and if you have something you'd like to add, please feel free to add.
Okay, but I'm trying not to, but
and we had set this up as a webinar, just not sure of numbers. And right now there's, it looks like 13 participants. So telling folks, if you're interested in being on the side where you can see myself and Shay and the mayor, just raise your hand and we're happy to move you over there. If you have questions, when we get to the discussion section, if you have questions, we certainly can move you over there then. So your choice. We'll give folks just one more minute or so and then get started. The question in the about our remote attendees on mute, and yes, if you're an attendee, we can see what name you've registered as, but we can't hear you. You won't be able to speak until you would raise your hand, and we would change the settings so you would be able to be heard. So let's go ahead and get started. I want to be sensitive to everybody's time and things like that. So just a couple of background. I'm Judy Johnson. I'm with our town planning department. I'm joined by Shay Stevens. And I don't know if Shay, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Shay Stevens. I'm the Community Relations Manager for the town. Happy to be here.
And we also have our mayor, Mayor Heminger, here. I don't know if you want to say anything.
Just I'm glad people are attending and I'm here to listen and learn as well. So thanks for hosting this.
Certainly. So we have a couple of just background housekeeping type of thing. So we are recording this meeting. We will put the recording on our webpage, which I'll share with you the web address so you can find that at some point. And tonight I'm going to do a very brief presentation, talk through some of this, and want this to be a conversation to hear from you. We really do want to hear from you and understand your thoughts, concerns, what you have to say. And as we get through that process, if you when we get to the questions comment period, just simply raise your hand. It should be a little button on, if you're on a computer, it's on my screen, it's on the lower lower right section, you can just push to raise your hand. And I guess the one etiquette is if you're not speaking, keep yourself muted so we don't pick up a lot of background noise. Shay, do you have anything else you want to say or?
No, I think we're all set, and thanks everybody for attending.
Alrighty, let me share my screen here. And I'm hoping you can see that in the right fashion. So I'm going to briefly go through this. It's very similar to a presentation that I gave last week at a council work session. So if you were at that meeting or saw that meeting, you would be familiar with a lot of this. So tonight we're bringing forward a potential update to the water sewer boundary agreement. And this is in response to a petition that we received earlier this, I guess it was in June of this year. To give you a little bit of background on the area, if I can get my slide to proceed. This is the area we are talking about. And if you look down in this very southern part here, but let me take a minute to kind of show you around. So this area shown here in pink is the town, current city limits of the town. The area shown here in this kind of a teal color is the town's extraterritorial jurisdiction. This little pink area here is the joint planning area between Chapel Hill and the county. And then the green areas, which you can see there's quite a bit of it surrounding the three sides of this, is the rural buffer. That is the county's rural buffer. There is no proposed change to that rural buffer as part of this proposal. And what we're planning on doing is focusing on this area just to the south of Chapel Hill, down to the Chatham County line. And so just zooming in a little bit closer to that, you can see again that teal color, which is the extraterritorial jurisdiction, or ETJ. This black line running through here is 15501. You can see this area here is Southern Village. Smith Level Road is to the west of that. And again, the rural buffer and our joint planning area. So this bright red line that winds around here is our current urban services boundary. And the urban services boundary is what where there is water and sewer is permitted. So the reasons we're doing this, why do we want to do this, is, as I said, in response to a petition. We are looking at opportunities to increase housing in the town. I think it's common throughout much of the United States. There's housing shortage and significant housing shortage here in Chapel Hill. We also are looking at potential opportunities for future transit service. We have and a potential future side path from the Chatham, the Southern Community Park down to the Chatham County line. This would be a multi-use path along one side of 15501. We have submitted the project to the state for funding. Don't know if we're going to get that yet. We also are looking at opportunities to respond to recent amendments to our town's comprehensive plan. The Town Council back in May adopted an amendment for the complete community strategy, as well as the Shaping Our Future Transportation and Land Use initiative. And just a couple of background, there is no, this proposal before our council or before you tonight that we're talking about, there is no rezoning of any of the properties at this point. It is an amendment to an agreement. And as part of that, there is no physical extension of any of the services in this area. Any water sewer extensions would be the responsibility of property owners or developer. We have been working with OWASA. They have not yet performed a detailed analysis of the water and sewer capacities, and would probably expect there'd be some measure of capacity and upgrades would be necessary. We are working, I am setting up a meeting with OWASA this week actually to start talking the details of this property or project area. So this is our proposal before you. You can see this orange line. This is what we're proposing to delineate as the proposed boundary change. Again, 15501 running down here in Smith Level, running up along the west side. Southern Community Park is up here at the north, and certainly you can just see the Walmart parking lot on the south side in Chatham County. We have this area encompasses about 360 acres and approximately 140 parcels, 139. There's again no change to the rural buffer. These properties are all within Chapel Hill's jurisdiction. We looked at, when drawing this boundary, we did look at the 15501 corridor and thinking about our proposed transit. So this map shows or graphics, but shows approximately a quarter mile from 15501 to this point. From here to there, it's a half mile across. Thinking that's a decent, certainly a walkable distance for residents to get to transit service if we were upgrading that service that it currently that could run along 15501. Did want to talk just a sec that we know there are certain areas that does have existing infrastructure. There are water lines running down Smith Level and a portion of 15501. The area Dogwood Acres does have water and sewer, and that's as well as the Star Point area has sewer. And that's from many years ago, before the water and sewer agreement was approved back in the late 80s. So since that agreement's been in place, folks have not been able to connect. Just want to talk just a sec about much of this area within this orange boundary is within the town's residential low density 1 acre zoning district. And most does not have access to water and sewer. Single family and single family with an accessory dwelling units are permitted within this low density zoning district. There is the little Star Point where which is zoned, we have that as a neighborhood conditional or neighborhood community zoning district, sorry. So just a little bit of nuts and bolts on how we would do this. It would extend that urban services boundary as shown on that orange line down to the Chatham County line. It would be a modification to an agreement that's held jointly by 5 parties, which Chapel Hill, Carborough, Orange County, Hillsborough, and OWASA. That is our water and sewer management planning and boundary agreement, often referred to as WASAMBA. All 5 parties would have to agree to this change in the service area. And there is our webpage where I anticipate that questions that we hear tonight that we're not able to answer and the recording from tonight would be placed. We'll probably try to put most of the questions that we hear on there so folks would have access to those who weren't able to attend tonight. And just where we are in the process, we're actually at the very beginning of this process. We have tonight's virtual meeting. Thursday night, we have an in-person meeting at the Christ United Methodist Church in Southern Village. As I said, we're meeting with OWASA and our partners, being the other parties to the agreement later this week to begin the technical analysis. This is the very beginning part, and that's where we're very interested in your comments. And then this would need to go to our town council for their action of recommendation or a recommendation not to approve. That could happen potentially at a later meeting this fall. And again, our webpage says townofchapelhill.org, and then WASAMBA is the name. And that's what I have to share. I think we're very interested in hearing what you have to say and comments and thoughts, anything we should be thinking about. So looking for folks to raise your hand. We will, you should get a little notice to be promoted to a panelist, accept that. And then when you come in on the panelist side, you're welcome to share your video. You don't have to. And let us know your questions or thoughts. And I think David Adams was our first in. And David, if you're able to, if you can unmute yourself, and would love to hear what you have to say.
Okay. So a similar petition was brought by the chamber 2 years ago to the council. There was a lot of public opposition to it, and the council eventually denied that petition. So the obvious question to me is, what's different about the petition this year that would allay the issues that were of concern the previous time? Thank you.
Mayor, do you want to respond, or?
Oh, sure. And I had a couple more pieces of information. First, I'll just share that we also own a parcel. Did you show that?
No, I did not.
That needs to be part of this discussion. The town owns a 10-acre parcel in this area that we would like to use for affordable housing. And in order to do so, we would need water and sewer. So that was one of the reasonings for taking a look. The other is that we've now heard from several property owners in the area who are having water quality issues, even though they have a very extensive filtration system, that they are experiencing water quality concerns. And so that was another interesting piece of information. I will say the item was brought forward a while back. It wasn't denied, it just wasn't acted upon. And now that we have more information, we've decided to take a look at what was going on. So the petition was not denied, it just wasn't acted upon at that time. It added into we've had these petitions on and off, but we didn't add it to the flume focus areas at the time because we had enough on our plate right then to look at. And since we did the work on complete communities and saw the dramatic need for middle housing, the missing middle, this area became an area of interest to consider looking at, because we could get more middle housing. Right now, the only thing you can build down there is houses on large lots and put in well and septic. And that means that people can clear the lot completely and build a very large home, which we have quite a few of in Chapel Hill. Whereas if there was water and sewer, there would be an opportunity to have more neighborhood community townhomes, that kind of missing middle in this area. So we're taking a look at that as part of the complete community strategy. So those are pieces of information we definitely need to have in the presentation, Judy, about the town-owned parcel on there, and that we're taking a look at this, and we're trying to gather information as we look at all the different aspects of the trade-offs of such a decision. With what are the trade-offs of 40,000 people driving in every day, not enough housing supply, the missing middle, which we have determined is a huge need, as we have opposite ends of the spectrum, luxury apartments and very expensive homes. We need more of that middle. So that was the reasoning for looking at this.
What about the objection to sprawl?
Well, sprawl is contained by the rural buffer. Rural buffer was put in place to contain sprawl. And therefore, this is contained because we're not touching the rural buffer. No one is suggesting to go into the rural buffer. We want to contain. This area is still inside the boundaries between Chapel Hill and the rural buffer. So that was part of the thinking as well.
Okay, thank you. Julie McClintock.
Okay, let's see. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
So, hi, Pam. Hi, Judy. I hope you're doing well. I had a question about this. I'm one of the antiques around town that was here when the comprehensive land use map was signed back in the 80s. And the reason that we did the Wasamba, I was on the WASA board at the time and also a council member. The reason we did it was because people were stringing lines out everywhere to serve something that needed to be served. And it's really important to know that once water and sewer is in the ground, the case law in North Carolina means that anybody who happens to be along it can tap on. So if you want your land use plan to sort of fall apart, the way to do it is to sort of start changing the water and sewer boundary agreement. And so this is a concern. I just think it's a good intention thing to try to get missing middle, but I'm concerned that monkeying with the water and sewer boundary will also definitely affect the land use plan, because the land use plan would have to be changed, and all the governments would need to agree. This is a very complicated agreement. It involves a lot of different entities, and then if you layer on top of that a couple other things, watersheds, for example, which is one of the reasons why that area was designated as a lower density area outside the city limits. And then the final thing would be the 2011 General Assembly law that made it a whole lot more difficult to annex. So I would expect, I guess let me just stop rambling, but just ask this focused question. If the town deserves to serve this tract of land and try to get some affordable housing on it, would it be taken into the town? Question.
Yes, so typically, well, we're seeing development along our fringes of town, and there is usually a negotiated condition that there would be a voluntary annexation into the town as part of their approval. So yes, I would anticipate the town parcel would become, we could petition that to be part of the town today.
Sure. But then everything, when the water sewer line goes out to it, then everything between that lot and the town will become urbanized inevitably.
There would have to be, it would be, right now, we're not proposing a zoning change at this time. It's residential low density 1. So 1 acre zoning for a single family house or a single family house with an accessory apartment. That's all that's really permitted on that property. Anything beyond that, you would need to seek a rezoning, and that would be before our town council for their action. I did want to just add a little bit to what Ms. McClintock was saying about the urban services, that line. So we have a rural buffer in this county. This is something that was created, I think it was 1986. So
Yes.
actually I was thinking about that the other day, we're closing in on 40 years of that. It doesn't seem like it's that long, but it's nearly 40 years old. The intent of that, and was to focus the development on not in the rural buffer, but focus the development within the towns of Chapelville and Carborough. So we're trying to hold true to that. We have a housing crisis need, and being able to create housing, to me, we can continue the sprawl that we're seeing in the rural buffer, where you're having 2 to 5 acre zoning districts where there's just subdivision after subdivision being created in those areas. I think we are a lot better off creating a higher density within our town limits, within our town's jurisdiction. I don't think we have a vision that this area would be a high density, like certainly not the apartments that we're seeing in the Blue Hill area. That's not at all the vision of what we have.
I understand, Judy, but I do think that it would be well worth your while to look into what's happened where water and sewer has provided, because, for example, the area that the map had it going up Mount Carmel Church Road. That is a rural road, and the idea that you run water and sewer up there, and it just be prohibitively expensive to begin with. But people really, really value the rural character of the area around our towns. We've enjoyed that for 40 years because of this land use plan. So I think people would be very upset to see that break down. So my concern is that in trying to do a good purpose, you will be jeopardizing the very thing that has really benefited us.
And so we're not proposing changes to the urban services boundary along Mount Carmel. It's only along that 15501 corridor. And it's, at most it's about a half a mile from 15501. It does not go over to lots that front on Smith Level. It does not go over to lots that front on Old Lystra. It's those lots in the middle there that are most of them are within a quarter mile of 15501. So trying to really focus on that ability to create some transit users. And, we don't have our bus rapid transit in place yet, but, and we don't have service south of the community park other than the one that runs down to the this park right down there. But buses we can change that service. It's not a static service. So thinking that if we can create some demand, we can create some services to go with that.
What about the extraterritorial area? How do you see that?
That would be where we would probably focus most of our growth. And that's what the extraterritorial jurisdiction is. It's areas that we intend to have built to urban, within our town density.
And the joint planning area? How do you view that?
Part of that would be within this area, yes. And that simply means that the county is involved in a entitlement process for that property. And I'm going to jump over to Aaron Nelson as he was next in line.
Thanks, y'all. For those who observed today's holiday, I hope it was an easy fast. I'm sitting in a car just about to head in for an end of today's Yom Kippur fast. As the petitioner the first time and the second time, regarding the first one, the ask was not to extend water and sewer. The ask was to include that area in a future land use planning process that was going on with the town. The town at the time said that they couldn't both afford to add it, delay in process of adding it, and there wasn't a lot of support of adding that to a planning process. So that was not denied, and it was not this petition. This petition is about changing that water and sewer line. Ms. McClintock makes a point I'd like to support. The original agreement she discussed in the 80s had the water and sewer boundary all the way to the Chatham County line. It is not until Southern Village is developed in the 90s that line gets pulled back. So Julie, the one that you signed, that you were a party to, if you remember back then, that's the one I think we should return to, that has water and sewer filling the full amount.
I'm not sure you're 100% sure on that, Aaron. I'd like to be verified.
Judy
Yes.
can confirm that.
Yes. The urban services boundary did extend down to Chatham County. And then as part of when Southern Village was created, the small area plan that was done there, it did shift the urban services boundary north.
And was it also part of the water and sewer boundary agreement at that time?
It would have had to have been, yes, because they traveled together.
Okay.
So our petition is simply to explore. I've been reading some of the emails of concern. For those that are worried it's going too fast, whatever this Chapel Hill process is will be repeated in Hillsborough, repeated in Scarborough, repeated at the county, repeated before the OWASA board. So nothing's happened anytime fast. I just know that it's time, we believe, to get started on it. Regarding annexation, in North Carolina, you really don't get annexed until you request it. So if anybody is worried that they are somehow between a future property that's in Chapel Hill and that the town will take them in against their will, Judy might be able to speak to it. It is maybe impossible, very difficult to take anybody in against their will. So if Dogwood Acres doesn't want to be in the city limits of Chapel Hill, I think that would be very difficult. We should be clear about that. Two things I'd like, Judy, for you to clarify, and I think you tried. One is an email earlier today from the Southern Entry Alliance said that despite the mayor's assertion and yours, that this line, the area being discussed, is inside the rural buffer. Can you confirm it is not inside the rural buffer?
I haven't seen the email, but no, we are not proposing any change to the rural buffer.
And this is not in it. Not only are you not changing it, but it's not in it.
Correct. The rural buffer is not within our jurisdiction. We don't have, that would be an Orange County effort. This does not go into the rural buffer.
And then the other piece was about watersheds. Can you describe what watershed generally, or they're a good place to find the watersheds that this is part of?
We have, I know there are maps on our webpage, and I don't know the site right off the top of my head, but we can certainly put those on our Wasamba page. We do have watershed protection, the Jordan Lake watershed. So it's so everything basically 5 miles north of Jordan Lake. So roughly through town is kind of Franklin Street south is within the Jordan Lake watershed. So that would all be this area would all be covered under that watershed.
The concern was more about the University Lake watershed. And my reading of your maps is this is not in the University Lake
Correct.
watershed.
The university is on the
That's correct.
other side. Yeah.
All right, this is not in the University Lake watershed. Thank you. And then, well, I guess that is all that I'd like to comment on. We are hopeful the housing is the crisis we're trying to solve. And I appreciate the comment about sprawl. We would think of this more like infill, that we set these boundaries and we are to grow inside of them if we are to protect the land that we have designated as rural buffer. And 1 mile to campus does not feel like Cary style sprawl, but it feels like building housing along a transit corridor proximate to the employment center. And I appreciate y'all taking the issue up. Thanks.
Certainly. Benji, I believe you were next. Benji Dowling.
Hello, can you hear me?
Certainly. Great.
Hi. Yeah, so we're super excited about the process. We live right on 15501, and I just wanted to make the panel aware and other folks that might watch this video. One of the big impacts that we're having is due to Walmart and their well that they have tapped into. All the wells of that surrounding area, especially right there at the corner of 15501 and Smith Level, are severely impacted. We have receipts almost in $20,000 of different things that we've had to tap into just to be able to keep our well active, because Walmart is draining. They're not using Chatham County water. They're using that surrounding groundwater for their resources. That's for all the groceries, that's for the air conditioner, that's for everything. So our well water has gone significantly down since Walmart has been built, and the land itself is also sinking. This is all documented. You know, we've got it. We've got in fact, our water has barium levels are up to an under just for the homes that are already built. Because it's
if you could go, so last I heard was where the land was sinking.
Yeah, so the land was sinking. And the other thing that we saw happen as a result of this is our two most recent tests was the well itself has barium levels that are unsafe. This is based on the Food and Drug Administration and what their levels are saying. And so the water quality has gone down so significantly that we are looking at having unsafe water levels based on what the EPA says is safe drinking water. And so again, all this is coming out of Walmart draining what well water we had 10 years ago before Walmart was around. And even then the well wasn't great. We had really high iron levels, all these kinds of things. And the other point that was made about this being excess money, that's not necessarily true, because the water lines are already run. They're sitting there. It's just a matter of allowing the homes that are already built to be able to be tapped into them. So we are severely, literally just asking as residents of Orange County, can my family please not take orange bass and not take unsafe water levels where we have to go to Weaver Street and buy our drinking water because we cannot drink what's coming out of the well, despite spending $20,000 over the last 10 years on our well. We still cannot drink in it, and bathing in it is still orange, nasty water.
Thank you. appreciate that. Terry Buckner.
Thank you. I am so sorry to hear about your water to the person who was speaking before. That is really horrible. But we are on the other side of Smith Level Road, and my community is being flooded. So ever since the highway was widened, we are having severe flooding in our neighborhood. We've had sinkholes that we've had to have DOT out constantly to fill in, the OWASA out to fill in. In my backyard, my sewer line is being exposed, and my electric utility line is ready to fall in the creek from erosion due to stormwater. So this is, I think, to me, what I hear from the last speaker and from my perspective on the other side of Smith Level Road as getting the flooding off of what's already being built there, is that this is a really complicated issue. And Aaron may think that this doesn't need to slow down and it's going to go slow, but I happen to know there's been a lot of backroom conversations about getting this approved through the other municipalities and other local governments. And so, but I think that we really need to do a bigger picture review of what's going on and who's going to be impacted by this. Your 10-acre property, and I think it's bigger than 10 acres, but it butts right up to Fan Branch Creek. So that's another flooding problem for us. And you're going to have to rezone it to make affordable housing on it. So it's kind of naive to say we're not going to talk about rezoning when we're going to add water and sewer, which is going to cause density at your request. So again, I'm asking you to slow this process down, do some real analysis, not just talking to OWASA about what might happen, or Chap Carborough, what do you think if we do this in our property? But let's get down and be the educated community that we always advocate ourselves as being, and do some analysis and say what will happen if we build in this watershed. And it's not just the Jordan Lake watershed encompasses the University Lake watershed. So this is not affecting University Lake. You're asking to build right up upon a watershed too, with nutrient sensitive water protection against it. That's where your boundaries go. So I think this is just a lot more complicated than it's being presented at, and I am asking for there to be more analysis. Thank you.
And Ms. Buckner, I don't know what neighborhood you live in, so
I live in Heritage Hills.
Okay, thank you.
As does Aaron Nelson.
Yeah, I know where he lives, but I did want to share my screen just to show you, share just a bit on the where the University Lake watershed is.
I talked to the water quality people this morning.
Mm-hmm.
They assured me that the University Lake watershed, it will be affected by this because it's within the Jordan Lake watershed.
So if you look at this map, if you can see on my screen, this blue line is the watershed.
And if you look at the state's GIS map that shows where the watersheds are, you will see that the bulk of this property that you're talking about is in a watershed 4 nutrient sensitive water protection area, but it butts right up against a watershed 2, which is the second most sensitive level of watershed. And that is for drinking water purposes. So I don't know enough about this to argue a whole lot, except what I learned this morning by talking to the water quality people.
Okay, well, thank you. Do we have other folks who have questions, comments, thoughts to share? I see there are some questions and answers, and what I will try to do with Shay's help is to prepare responses to these. I'm not just don't believe I can answer all of these just right now. I mean, some of them who submitted the petition, I think Aaron Nelson did respond to that, that the chamber did submit that.
Yes, I had asked to be on panel.
Yes, and I guess we were looking for you, somebody to raise your hand. I apologize for that. So go ahead.
Okay. My name is Rhoda Pappert. I live in the most southern part of Orange County, just a 1/10 of a mile north of the Walmart. My neighbors, Daniel and Benji Downing, and I are very interested in supporting the extension of the Owasso services to the Chatham County line. Our 2 houses were built in 2001, and the builder connected both houses to the well that was drilled on my property. Despite a really elaborate, very costly filtering system, our well water has always been problematic, but much, much more so in the past 4 to 5 years. We recently had our well water retested. We'd had it done 3 years ago. And as Benji said a bit ago, we found that it has a very dangerously high level of barium. We've approached Owasso several times since 2007, asking to tap into the 16-inch water main that runs under our driveway, but we've been repeatedly sent copies of the Orange County Owasso agreement forbidding that action. Last week, we each received a rather concerning letter regarding environmental assessment activities related to underground storage tanks at the gas station right across the road from us. This is not connected with the topic of extension of Owasso services, but it simply emphasizes the critical need for us to change over from our bad well water to municipal water service. So we strongly, strongly support the extension of Owasso services. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Other comments, questions from folks who haven't yet had a chance to speak? And while you're contemplating, if you have something to share, you can certainly put your thoughts in our Q&A. I did not share my email. I apologize for that. It is jjohnson@townofchapelhill.org. Happy to hear any comments. You can also contact planning@townofchapelhill.org. As I said, we will be in person at the church in Southern Village Thursday at 5:30. So hope to see many of you there. Looks like somebody's. I'm gonna move Martin Johnson in. Go ahead, Martin.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So again, thanks so much for pursuing this. One thing that really frustrates me is to see the kind of what's called leapfrog development that's happening right now. So even though we like the idea, I think protecting rural buffers is really important, but when you drive down 15501, as soon as you cross the Chatham County line, you see lots and lots of development. And I always think, like, how many of those families have to drive from Chatham County to work in Chapel Hill because we have to try to leave this tiny strip of land kind of in a very low density. So I really would like to see kind of real, as we get into the zoning, kind of real transit-oriented development, really focusing on kind of getting the greenway or side path kind of built. And just wanted to thank you for pursuing this, because we are in a housing crisis, and this is a way to produce more housing. And I think approaching it by saying no more single family homes and large lots, no McMansions, what we need is density, quadplexes, things that will be really compatible with this area. And so just appreciate the work you've done to kind of start this process. I know it's a long process.
Thank you. Other comments or questions folks want to share? If not, I'm happy to wrap up early. Well, if you have anything to share, just let us know. I'm going to put my email in the chat. And please feel
Judy?
free to contact us. Yes, Julie.
Judy, this is Julie. To get this watershed stuff straightened out would really be important. I think that I remember it as being a very complicated area from a watershed perspective, and to have that straightened out with a clear exposition would really be helpful going into this conversation. Thank you.
Certainly be happy to do that. We're, as I said, we're at the very beginning of this process. So we are just starting to dive into the technical review of it. So certainly something I'll be looking into in the next upcoming future.
And have you had conversations with OWASA yet?
Yes.
And with what result?
We have, I forget the term exactly, that technically it's possible to extend both water and sewer to serve the area. We have not had the detailed analysis completed or done or begun to be able to explore that in depth, but from a, back of the envelope glance, it's possible is what they have said.
Of course, their job is to put it where the cities and entities of OWASA want it. Okay, right.
They did say, I think we can qualify that a little bit. They did say there was plenty of water capacity, but the infrastructure would need to be upgraded at some entry points in order to do this. And also, I don't think we mentioned there is already some water and sewer, some properties being served who were served before when the boundary was down at the end. There's properties that already had hooked up, so there are already some there. So there are some properties that actually have water and sewer already in this area.
So Pam, who do you figure would be paying for the service?
Well, any developer that comes in, or any property owner that decides to buy a parcel, or existing property owner would be paying. The town wouldn't be paying for this. OWASA would be interacting with those whoever made requests would interact with OWASA.
What about the affordable housing land, though? Wouldn't that be paid for by the town?
Not necessarily. If we worked with an affordable housing partner, that would be part of their development costs as well.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your attention and attendance this evening. We certainly appreciate it, and it probably will be certainly won't be till tomorrow till we get the video posted, and we will be working to get comments and responses to your questions posted as soon as possible, and look forward to talking with you more on Thursday in person at the church in Southern Village at 5:30. And I guess that's it, unless you have any last minute questions or comments. All right, well, have a good evening. Take care.